Hello and welcome to Gallo de Boxeo. The following is a post-fight analysis of Saturday's fight between Artur Beterbiev and Callum Mundo Smith for the WBC, WBO, and IBF light heavyweight championships of the world. I ultimately saw this fight as a stay busy fight for Artur Beterbiev, and I was not surprised. The seventh round knockout came as expected, and here's why I felt this fight went as expected. I've seen both of them fight before. I've even seen Artur Beterbiev fight live. I've seen him fight his early bouts when I used to live on the East Coast, fighting Christian Cruz, Reiko Saunders, and Tavoris Cloud. And when I saw those fights, I saw a guy that had a very calculated pressure style. Just came forward, but was extremely intelligent. And if you watch his fights, you clearly see he doesn't just come in mindlessly. This individual calculates his moves. He calculates it with a approach that you commonly see in the ex-USSR, which is where he's from. If you see individuals like that from Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Russia, they have a very calculated, scientific fencing style approach that does quite well, especially in the Olympic levels. And as you're seeing in the last 10 to 15 years in the pro levels, with all of these guys coming out from that part of the world, the Lomachenkos, Golovkins, Usyks, and in this case, Beterbiev. On top of that, it's the natural power that he has. When I was in that arena, or those arenas, watching his fights, you could hear the gloves hitting the other person when Beterbiev threw. He was one of the few people in those fights in Montreal, aside from David Lemieux, that you could hear the fight, the punches connecting. And just watch the fights. Watch the fight between him and Tavoris Cloud, and when he just demolishes him in 2 rounds, you see that this guy has God-given power. You know, it's just a power that's just you can't develop that. It just comes naturally to him. And so with that calculated pressure style, ultimately, as Callum Johnson, a previous opponent of Beterbiev, shows, the best way is to just take the fight to Beterbiev and hope for the best, because you are coming across a technical marvel with fight-ending power. And that is very tough. That is very tough to deal with. It's the reason why Canelo has kept quiet about him for all these years. I remember there was talk about, would Canelo fight Beterbiev after he fought Kovalev? I was telling people that fight's not going to happen. You can make a video game simulation, and that's the only way it was going to happen. And I like Canelo a lot, but styles make fights, and Beterbiev is a terrible style for Canelo. So this style was now coming up against Callum Smith. Now, I've seen Callum Smith fight. I've seen his successes in the World Boxing Super Series. I believe that's called the WBSS, where he won the super middleweight distinction. And he came across guys like George Groves, which was probably his biggest win there, and as well as Nicky Holskin, and then went on to face Canelo, and then moved to light heavyweight. Now, from what I've seen of Callum Smith, he's an extremely talented boxer, and he's got amazing dimensions and range, and a lovely hook, a lovely check hook, the one that spelled the beginning of the end for George Groves in their fight, and just a very, very all-around great fighter. The one weakness that I saw with him was the inside game. If you look back to a fight between him and Nicky Holskin in the WBSS tournament, Callum Smith won that fight. But there were times where Nicky Holskin put him in trouble. And from what I recall, Holskin was a last-minute substitute for that fight. And seeing that is where I had my first reservations with Callum Smith. Because when he got pressured, he would just shell up. and often do forget to do the things that would be very beneficial for a taller man to do in that situation, i.e., clinching, like Vladimir Klitschko, for example. These things he wouldn't do. And from a judge and referee standpoint, it looked like he was taking punishment, even though he clearly was in the fight and ultimately won the Holskin fight. But this led to my doubts with him in the Canelo fight, because as we all know, Canelo is a genius fighting both from the distance, but especially in the pocket. And lo and behold, we saw it. We saw Callum Smith had no answer for Canelo, and I believe there was the revelation that he was injured in the arm, and if that is true, that's definitely viable. But you saw it; he had no answer for somebody being in the pocket. And from watching those two fights, I knew that Callum Smith had a puncher's chance against Beterbiev, because Beterbiev is about that pressure and coming forward and not giving you space and just grinding you till he puts you away. And so when the fight happened, it went exactly the way I thought. You could tell that Mark Ramsey and his crew told Beterbiev to close the distance and work his way inside. And you saw that right from the get-go at the beginning of the fight. But to his credit, Callum Smith actually countered more than I ever thought he ever would in the pocket, and actually clicked with Beterbiev a lot more than I thought he did, which is where I could see the cynics of Beterbiev wondering, how will he deal with somebody who's more accurate or has more power than Callum Smith? In this case, Dmitry Bivol, or Bivol, as they say. I have Russian friends. They tell me it's Bivol. Yes. But as you saw, you could see it was becoming like the Kell Brook Gennady Golovkin fight. Beterbiev was getting hit, but you could tell those punches were not affecting him the way Callum Smith wanted to. And Callum Smith hit him with some good shots. And I think it was around that mid period of the fight, those like third to fifth rounds, you could tell Beterbiev was just, he was aware that this was somebody he didn't have to worry about punching power wise, i.e., like Callum Johnson, for example, when he got knocked down in that fight. And it was a matter of time before he just crushed him on the inside, i.e., round 7. And it was tough to watch that, because I do like Callum Smith as a fighter and also as a person, because he's, for those of you that know, his sister, I believe, has autism, which is on his trunks. And that's relatable, because I have a younger brother that has that same condition. But at the end of the day, when a fight happens, one wins and one loses. And Beterbiev put away Callum Smith as expected. Now, what's next for them? Obviously, for Artur Beterbiev, the money fight is Dmitry Bivol to unify the titles. For the longest time, I didn't think that was going to happen because of all the promotional disputes and network disputes. And let's call it like it is. I'm a boxing fan as much as anybody else. But at the end of the day, this is a business. These are all businessmen with gloves. If they really wanted to fight for free, they would meet up in a schoolyard like we all did when we were young people and see who was the toughest person. But at this point, it's about making money. And I understand that. It's a lot of risk, physical, mental, career-wise, to take just one fight, and getting the most money out of that fight to support yourself and your loved ones is important. So for a while, I didn't think that fight was going to happen because there was too much red tape. But this recent era of finding a benefactor willing to put the money down for these fights to happen, in this case, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I can now see this fight actually happening. And it's been talked about by the people in Saudi Arabia. And from what history has shown me with boxing, with professional wrestling like the WWE, and now hearing the recent World Cup announcement for, is it 2034, I believe? If these individuals want to make a fight happen, they will. And so I do think this fight will happen. As for Callum Smith, I've been hearing about his interviews and his interviews with his brothers, and there seems to be this talk that he wants to win a world light heavyweight championship before he retires. Now, is that possible with the current crop of champions, our Beterbiev and Bivol? I I don't think so. I don't think so. I think if he wants a title, he may have to wait until one of these individuals relinquishes a belt. And that's wishful thinking, that's tough to do. Do I think he can provide some interest in the division fighting other top 10 heavyweights? Of course. I think there's definitely guys he can fight there, and it'd be interesting to see him bounce back, cuz to me personally, I like the boxers that bounce back from defeats. I think this perfectionism that Floyd Mayweather, a fighter I love, but I really like, but as the perfectionism that he's caused, that you're only good as your undefeated record, I think is poppycock, because at some point you're bound to lose in any sport, boxing especially. So seeing Callum Smith maybe fighting a top 10 light heavyweight would be probably the thing that I would like to see, because he does have a lot of energy there, and I think fights maybe in England in the future to help build up his reputation might be pretty good. And looking forward to seeing what he does, because I hope he doesn't stop fighting, because I know there's a lot of guys that seem to stop fighting after fighting Beterbiev, and hopefully not for this guy. Anyways, that's my analysis on Artur Beterbiev and Callum Smith. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. And looking forward to delivering more videos on my insight regarding the sport of boxing. Take care.